You've heard about the birds and the bees ever since you were a little kid. You know that honeybees play an important role in pollinating fruit and vegetables. What you don't know is that without them, there'd be a whole lot less food on your plate of any kind, and what's there wouldn't be as good. But little bitty bees have some great big problems. I'm about to dive in head first and tell you about those. Come on, let me take you where the food comes from. Brandy, you work for the Florida Department of Agriculture, but your office is at the University of Florida. Specifically, you're part of the bee complex at University of Florida.
Yeah.
What do you do here?
So I'm the Assistant Bureau Chief of the Plant and Apiary Inspection Bureau, and I specifically oversee our bee inspection. We have about 5,000 registered beekeepers in the state of Florida. So that ranges from folks with one hive all the way up to we have producers with 30,000, 40,000 colonies. So about 550 of our beekeepers in the state are what we consider commercial beekeepers. Whenever the strawberries are blooming, whenever the blueberries are blooming, those beekeepers will actually pick their colonies up from wherever they are, load them onto their flatbed truck or their trailer, and haul them out to that field and have those bees sitting there during the bloom. The goal being so that those bees can go visit the flowers, pick up that pollen, and distribute it among the other flowers to improve the crop production of those plants.
Do you have to inspect all sizes, from the hobby people who've got one or two hives all the way up to the big commercial ones?
We sure do. So different states have different regulations, but here in Florida we do require registration and inspection for every size operation. So at time of registration we go out and do an inspection of those colonies, and what we're looking for is pests and diseases that could have detrimental impacts on beekeepers and therefore impacting agriculture as a whole through pollination. We make sure that all of our commercial beekeepers get inspected annually, and that's because those are the ones who are moving those hives in and out of state for different pollination seasons, different honey flows, and so they're a higher risk because they might be picking up pests in other areas. So in January and February of every year, commercial beekeepers from Florida are loading up their hives onto trucks and shipping them all the way across the country to California. It's almond country, right? So there's almond orchards all over the place. And almonds require insect pollination to produce any fruit. 2.2 million colonies just to get through that almond pollination season.
Can a beekeeper just load their hives on a trailer and say, I'm heading to California, I got a job, I gotta go? Or is this a regulated process? Or
Each state has their own requirements for the timeline that those bees need to be inspected before they reach their state. If you're moving and you're gonna be encountering other beekeepers, we need to make sure that your colonies are free of pests and diseases that might be causing problems to those other beekeepers. Honeybees, if they go out and they forage. So they go out and they find flowers or they find, tree sap and they bring it back. Well, if they find a weak colony that has honey stores or pollen stores, those bees will also go rob the resources out of that weaker colony if they can get in. So because of the nature of honeybees, they are very prone and susceptible to sharing diseases, sharing pathogens, sharing pests, because if they're going into somebody else's house, they could pick up whatever's there.
Does the Department of Agriculture's involvement, does it stop with bees or does it continue with honey?
So there's a division of food safety, and they're responsible for regulating all of the food that we humans eat. That division regulates honey. There's also the Division of Agricultural and Environmental Services, and they regulate pesticide applications.
How did you get in the bee business? What led you down this path?
I did my undergraduate here at the University of Florida. I was planning to go to veterinary school. My roommate convinced me to take an entomology class. One of the field trips for that course was to go out to the bee biology unit, and I was fascinated. I'd never seen bees up close before. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing. I didn't know you could just hold a frame of bees and not be attacked. My journey didn't start in bees, but once I got into bees, there was no coming back.
Amy, it's safe to say this place is abuzz with activity, but where are we and what's going on here?
So we are at the University of Florida IFAS Honeybee Research and Extension Laboratory.
And this facility it's fairly new.
It is fairly new. This was built in 2018. This was a great example of the general public, community, research, and educators coming together.
So, and this is a really good example of really, I would think, one of the nation's finest facilities for ongoing research into honeybees. The problems that we're having with the honeybee populations, the pressures that are on the honeybees, and the role that they play in agriculture, and continuing to try to unravel all of that and make it better.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun because we have this facility to focus on research, instruction, and of course, education and outreach. And so this is kind of like a honeybee campus.
I think people generally think the bee thing is a very natural process. We talk about the birds and the bees. Those are the most basic things, but it's not so random as it would seem, is it?
It's not random, especially with honeybees. So honeybees are not native to the United States. They're not native to North America. They're actually native to Europe.
So how did this facility come to exist? This is kind of there were a lot of hands involved in this. This is not just the University of Florida by itself.
Sure, so this facility actually was a great example of extension efforts. So the general public came together, the Florida State Beekeepers Association, they had worked with Dr. Jamie Ellis, who is one of our faculty members here at the university who focuses on honeybees. So he was working with backyard beekeepers, he was working with commercial beekeepers, and they really wanted to support him, and they asked him, how can we support you? And at the time, he jokes around and says that he had a relatively small lab. And so he said, I really just would love to have more space. And so again, because this is a honeybee campus, they wanted to build him this lab. And so there were efforts all around with the University of Florida, of course, the governor, and Florida State Beekeepers Association, and really beekeepers from all around the world had helped contribute to build this lab.
Now, all because this is a facility where the research that is done here is going to spread globally to benefit beekeepers everywhere and benefit agriculture everywhere.
Sure. One of our missions here at the lab is to educate, to do research, and to do instruction worldwide. So it's not just locally here in Florida, but in the United States and beyond. Bees are a very complex social system. They do a lot of things that we don't quite understand, and so with our research efforts, we do try to understand them a little bit better, but there's still a lot that's unknown with the honeybees. So here at the lab, we actually have 3 things that we focus on with part of our research, and the first thing is with Varroa. Varroa is a mite, and what this mite does is it feeds on the honeybee fat bodies. It spreads multiple viruses actually to honeybees, and so Varroa is actually the #1 cause of honeybee decline today.
A lot of people are so scared of bees. I don't think they ever take a really close look and see what's going on. But there's some fascinating tidbits and facts about bees.
Sure. So here at our facility, we actually have a red room. We call it our observation hive room, and the reason why it's red is because honeybees actually can't see the color red.
They cannot see.
They cannot see
the color red. So when they're in that room, they think they're in the dark.
They think they're in the dark. They're just living their normal, natural lives in the colony.
Like they would be inside a hive.
Exactly, which makes it really nice for research because we're able to see them kind of in their natural habitat.
So they can't see red. Can they recognize other colors?
They can recognize darker colors. They can recognize different shades of colors. They see things differently than how we see them. They usually like bright colors. You'll see that beekeepers will typically, their suits are normally lighter colors, so they're white or tan. They don't necessarily like the color black.
Uh-oh.
What usually happens is that honeybees will think that when they see something black, it simulates a bear. And bears, of course, love honeybees. A lot of people think that bears actually go to honeybee hives for the honey. They're actually there for the larva. And so that's what the bears eat. They'll eat the larva because that's a source of protein for them.
So Winnie the Pooh had it wrong all these years. He's not getting his head stuck in the honey pot. He was going in for the larva.
Exactly. If we had to rewrite Winnie the Pooh, that's what we would change.
Now, I told you I was going face first in a beehive, and I wasn't kidding. You should see what's going on in here. It's just incredible to get a chance to pop the top and look down in here and see what Mother Nature is doing, along with a little help from us. You're not about to pop the top on that thing.
He's about to pop the top.
You're kidding me.
We're gonna open up and we're gonna look inside.
We're literally going face first in a beehive.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. This is the kind of thing you think about when you're a kid. You're kind of like, I wonder what's going on in there.
Exactly. So here we probably have 40 to 60,000 honeybees in here.
In this one hive?
In this one hive. And typically in a colony, there's one queen, and then we have a lot of female bees that we call workers. And so you'll see most of the bees in here are all females.
Right.
So the females are the ones that sting.
Oh, what do the males do?
The males, the only thing that they're good for really is to mate with queens outside of their colony.
I've heard a lot of ladies say that. So, what's the purpose of the smoke?
So with the bees, the way that they communicate with each other are through pheromones. And
which are like scents.
Which is the scent, exactly. So when the bees are communicating through pheromones, they release a danger pheromone. And so what the smoke does is it masks that pheromone, and that way the bees can't communicate with each other saying that they're in danger. We don't want them to think they're in danger.
I feel surprisingly comfortable, but again, I'm covered head to toe in all of this kind of stuff.
They're tending for their larvae, their babies, they're cleaning the colony.
Look at this. Look.
So it sounds like we found the queen.
Already,
Let's
wow.
see.
Now, how do you identify
So
the queen?
She is
she wearing
So
a
you
little
can
crown,
see
or?
right there where my finger is.
She's so much bigger.
She is a little bit bigger. Her abdomen is much longer than the rest of the bees.
And I guess that's because it's full of eggs.
It is full of eggs, so the queen can lay 1,000 to 2,000 eggs per day.
What is the structure? I mean, we all know honeycomb. It's delicious. It's one of the best things, but there's so many different racks in this one hive.
Sure, so these racks are actually called frames. So typically when you're working honeybee colonies, there are 10 frames in every box. And within those frames, you'll see that the bees will actually draw out wax, and they'll draw out beeswax, and that's basically where the bees will store some of their resources. And they actually store all of their resources in there.
They don't know they're making the honey for us to eat.
Because they're European honeybees, they're used to a colder climate and they need to survive through winter time. So what they're doing with the honey is normally they'll take the nectar, they'll bring it in from the flowers, and what they're trying to do is produce their own fuel. They use that honey so that they can stay alive and they can survive the winter time. Usually they make a little bit extra, and that's what we as beekeepers will take from them. So we don't take all of it at one time, and we have to, it's kind of a science and an art.
So if you took too much, then the colony would not survive.
They would not do well, correct.
Huh. What's the purpose of peeking in here and see what's going on? What are you looking for?
So typically what we do when we're going to a hive is to inspect for any pests or diseases. That's always the first thing that we're looking for. And we always want to make sure that we can either find the queen or we're finding signs of the queen. And the way that you find signs of the queen are her eggs. So you know that if you see eggs in the comb, that there's been a queen in there at least within the past 3 days or so.
You guys are out here in shirt sleeves and a veil. Why am I so much more afraid of this than you are?
Well, I think first of all, we're used to getting stung pretty often, so it's not a big deal. You know, with people, especially their first time in the colony, each colony has their own temperament. And so colonies can usually recognize they're humans, yes. And so because we work them pretty often, they're used to seeing us. They know that they're not afraid. They know that there's nothing to be afraid of. And so we feel a little bit more comfortable. Now, if this is a colony that I have never gone through before, or if this is something new, then I would probably be suited up a little bit more.
This is home to these bees, and bees always come home.
They don't always necessarily.
So the whole colony might go out, but the whole colony doesn't always come home?
Sure. The whole colony will likely go out at some point of their life. And actually at the end of their life, when they get old enough, they leave the colony and they pass away outside the colony and they never come back.
That's kind of depressing.
It is a little depressing.
I mean, they're out flying around looking for citrus trees and vegetables and flowers and everything else. And is it like bee GPS? How do they know this is where they live?
They do have an internal GPS, but they communicate through something. I don't know if you've ever heard of the waggle dance before.
I'm just gonna go ahead and admit, no, not ever,
Okay.
not in any club I was ever in, no.
So when the worker bees go out and they find a really good nectar or pollen source, they will come back to the colony to let their sisters know this area was a really great place to go. We should all go there. That's where you all need to go to find sources to bring back.
This is the place.
Exactly. And how they communicate that is through something called a waggle dance. And so what they'll do is they'll basically go through the colony as their sisters follow them, and they'll take different patterns. So they'll either go zigzag, and sometimes they'll shake their bottom. So they'll shake their abdomen so that their sisters know that this is how far, this is where you need to take a right, or this is where you need to take a left. And that's how you find the good nectar that I found.
Can you demonstrate that? I'll do it with you.
I'll let you do it first.
Okay, so is it like that?
Yep,
or-
exactly like
okay.
that.
And that tells them turn left, turn right. This is the way. I found a great new restaurant.
Exactly.
We all got to try it out.
Yes.
This is how you get there. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So anybody who hasn't kept up with the news, who heard, yes, the world's bee population is in trouble, and then didn't follow up any further from that, would they be surprised at the overall state of the bee industry now?
If you look at the numbers, and we truly were losing, net losing 40% a year. In 2006, we had 2.7 million colonies. So if we were losing 40% a year and not recovering that, what would we have today? We'd have fewer than 20,000 colonies. So what we're seeing is beekeepers work their rear ends off. Huge management stress, a lot of work to recover those losses. I tell everybody who'll listen, they are the heroes in this story. So I always explain it kind of using 100 colonies in simple math. If I have 100 colonies, I'm going to lose 40 of them this year. So I'm going to have 60. Because
that's going to be every year?
Every year. But if those were net losses, we'd actually have hardly any honeybee colonies left in the US, and that's not the case. So they have 100, they lose 40, they've got 60. With 60, they split or purchase more colonies and recover 41. So with a gross loss rate of 40, they actually increased their numbers. It's very common beekeeper practice to go into any one of these hives that's very strong, remove some of the combs, put those combs in a new hive, and you can either insert a queen that you purchase or allow those bees to make their own queen. The net result is you had one colony that you made two. We're not net losing colonies, but beekeepers themselves are experiencing great gross losses that at great economic and labor cost to them, they're having to recover every year. I would argue right now that beekeeping is not sustainable at the current rate. If we were to ever have issues with honey prices or pollination prices where they were to dip significantly, it would no longer be cost effective for beekeepers to recover their losses and keep us moving at the pace that we're moving.
And what happens to these bees? Are they dying? Are they just leaving and going somewhere else? Or they're just succumbing to pests and diseases?
Every year without exception, the beekeepers report the same causes. Varroa, which is a mite that gets on the outside of the bee's body. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. Nutrition, queen quality, bad weather, and something they call weak in fall. It's almost universally accepted that the most significant pest threat to honeybees is that mite. And this mite gets on the outside of the bee's body, pierces the body, and consumes fat bodies, a very important tissue of honeybees. While it's doing that, it transmits various pathogens. So to control an insect on a mammal, you can select fairly easily things that kill the insect but don't bother the mammal. Well, with honeybees, we're talking about a mite on a bee, an arthropod on an arthropod. So you've got to find something that's effective against mites that has no impact on bees, and that's why our industry's struggling to control varroa.
I was very surprised on one of my first visits to a commercial farm many years ago to see hives on flatbed trailers in the fields. Beekeepers actually lease loan their beehives to commercial farms for pollination.
Blueberry is a really great example. In the absence of managed honeybee colonies or any pollinators, about 10 to 20% of the flowers will set fruit. When you move honeybees to blueberries, 60 to 90% of the flowers will set fruit. Pollination's an input the same way fertilizer and water and pest control is. Except that fertilizer, water, and pest control doesn't take you from 10% fruit set to 90% fruit set, but honeybees do. You know, there are estimates out there that 20% or more of all of food produced is dependent on the pollination of honeybees.
What's the future outlook for this industry?
I am more encouraged than I have ever been. Number one, honeybees are resilient. They've been around longer than we've been finding ways to, work with them. Number two, we have brilliant students around the world who are 2, 5, 10 years from establishing their own lab. The technology is available today. The support and infrastructure at universities, the literature, the knowledge that we have, I have no doubt that we are going to be able to address issues that bees and beekeepers face well into the future, because I'm very optimistic because I see what's coming. I see what's coming, the talent, the support, I just see what's there, and I really am optimistic about the direction things are heading.
Honey might be the sweetest thing we get from our relationship from bees, but it's far from the most important. Really, it's an afterthought. So maybe next time you see a bee buzzing around on your back porch or at your picnic, don't swat. Let her go about her business. She's got important work to do out here where the food comes from.